You ever look at something familiar, an old photo, a childhood home, and just feel something is wrong? I felt it the second I stepped into the lake house I inherited. They say old walls can talk. These walls were screaming. I thought I was just cleaning out a dead aunt's past. I had no idea I was about to excavate the grave of my own marriage. My name is Alara. I'm 34, and I build futures. As a rising executive at Auratech Solutions, the Seattle company I poured my life into, my world is algorithms, quarterly projections, and the clean, sterile hum of servers. The past is just data to be archived, or so I thought. The call came on a Tuesday, shattering the glass and steel rhythm of my life. My great-aunt, Beatrice, was gone. I hadn't seen her in maybe 15 years, a woman who existed more as a vague, stubborn memory than as family. And she had left me something. Not just a token. She left me a house, a remote, rambling lake house on the Olympic Peninsula. My husband, Marcus, was the picture of support. You should go. Ilara, he said, rubbing my shoulders that night. Marcus, my CFO, my partner at Auratech, the man who was the grounded, logical core to my creative vision. At 38, he was the rock, but his reaction to the news was odd. Seriously, he urged, his voice unusually warm. Take a real break. Go alone. Reconnect with your roots. Process the paperwork. I'll handle everything at the office. He was almost insistent. It should have felt kind, but it felt procedural, like he was moving a chess piece, clearing me off the board so he could get on with the game. 2 days later, I was on the road. The drive was a decompression chamber, leaving the city's hum for the ferry's thrum, and then the deep, wet silence of the peninsula. The roads narrowed from highway to asphalt to little more than a gravel path cutting through ancient, dripping ferns. The house was at the end of everything. It wasn't just old, it was tired, sagging under the weight of the rain and the trees. The paint peeled in long, ghostly strips, and the dock listed into the dark. Still water, the surface like black glass. The silence was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic lapping of the water against the shore. Inside, the air was a physical thing, a heavy blanket of mildew, dust, and the faint, sweet smell of decay. Furniture huddled under white sheets like a congregation of ghosts. I opened a window, and the damp air did nothing to clear the scent, only adding the smell of wet pine. I spent the first day just walking, touching things. A life lived in silence. And that's when the calls started. My phone buzzed, vibrating against the antique wood of the Kit Reed counter. It was Marcus. Hey, just checking in. You settled okay? It's a lot. Marcus. It's pretty run down. Smells like a crypt. But you found everything all right. A strange choice of words. I mean, I found the breaker box and a colony of spiders. That's about it. He laughed, a quick, tight sound that didn't reach his eyes, though I couldn't see them. Right. Good. Well, just let me know what you find. He called again 2 hours later, asking if I'd found the keys to the boat shed. He called the next morning, asking if I'd checked the attic. This was not Marcus. Marcus was the kind of man who saw a single "I'm safe" text as sufficient communication for a 3-day business trip. This constant attention, this repetitive questioning about finding things, felt less like care and more like surveillance. On the second day, I decided to tackle the study. It smelled of old paper, dried tea leaves, and mice. Beatrice had clearly spent most of her time here. Books on botany and local history were stacked on every surface. I was on my knees, armed with a spray bottle and a roll of paper towels, wiping decades of grime from the baseboards beneath her heavy oak desk, when my hand brushed against something, tape. I angled my head, squinting in the dim light. A small, old-fashioned brass key was taped to the underside of the desk, hidden deep in the back. My heart gave a strange, single lurch. I stood up, scanning the room. My eyes landed on a large, truly terrible painting of a stormy seascape hanging on the wall. It was crooked. I went to straighten it and felt the entire frame shift, moving away from the wall on hidden hinges. Behind it, a small, dark gray wall safe. My breath caught. I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying, heavy click. The safe wasn't full of jewelry or bundles of cash. It was just a thick, bulging manila folder and a single black USB drive. On top of the folder was a folded piece of paper, my name written in Beatrice's spidery, weak hand. I unfolded it. The note was dated only 2 weeks before she died. Ilara, if you are reading this, then I failed. Do not trust Marcus. Check Elysian Ventures. I'm sorry. The words on the paper seemed to vibrate in the silence. Elysian Ventures. Do not trust Marcus. It made no sense. It was like trying to read 2 sentences from different languages at the same time. My Marcus. The man who balanced not just my company's books, but my entire life. This had to be the paranoid rambling of a reclusive old woman. But Beatrice, for all her eccentricity, had never been stupid. My hands were shaking. I set the paper aside and focused on the USB drive. It was a simple, cheap piece of black plastic. I plugged it into the sleek port of my laptop, and the machine whirred. Recognizing the foreign object, a single unlocked folder appeared on my desktop. I opened it. It was not a diary. It was an archive. Scans, PDFs, audio files, organized with a chilling meticulousness. I clicked on a subfolder titled Bank Records. My breath hitched. The screen was filled with scanned wire transfer authorizations, one after another, all from an account I had never heard of. But I knew the signature at the bottom. I saw it every single day on checks, on contracts, on SEC filings. It was Marcus's bold, confident scrawl. The transfers were enormous. Tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of dollars, moving between accounts I did not recognize. The recipient on most of them was a single entity, Elysian Ventures. I clicked back, found a folder labeled Elysian. It contained incorporation documents. It was a shell company, registered in Delaware, with a managing director I'd never heard of. But the funding was a complex web that, after 10 minutes of tracing, I realized led back to a series of secondary accounts at Auratech Solutions. My company. He was using my company to fund this thing. Then I saw the other files. Loan agreements. I opened one, a sick, cold feeling spreading through my chest. The document was a private loan for an obscene amount of money, issued from Elysian Ventures to Beatrice. The interest rate was predatory, something close to 30%, and the collateral was listed in stark, black and white print, the property located at 14 Lake Crescent Drive. This house. I frantically searched for the last document in the folder. It was a notice of foreclosure. Elysian Ventures had seized the property 6 weeks ago. Beatrice hadn't owned this house when she died. She had been foreclosed on. My inheritance was a lie, a stage set for me by my husband. My phone felt like a block of ice in my hand, but I had to hear his voice. I dialed, trying to breathe, trying to push the panic down and arrange my features into a mask of casualness. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, Lara, find any more spiders? Hey, I said, my voice thin. I cleared my throat. Just sorting through paperwork. It's endless. Hey, a weird question. Do you remember a project called Elysian Ventures? His laugh was immediate, breezy, and utterly dismissive. Elysian God, where did you hear that? That was a failed project from years ago. Total bust. Why? It was just, in some of her old papers, looked like some investment she made. Poor woman, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Must have lost her money. Yeah. Lara, total dead end. Don't waste your time on it. He was lying. The dates on the incorporation papers were from 8 months ago. As he was speaking, My cursor hovered over an audio file in the Beatrice folder. The file was labeled with a date from just 3 weeks ago. I double-clicked. The audio was tinny, clearly a recording of a phone call. Beatrice's voice came through, weak and trembling, but with a steeliness I remembered. "You can't do this, Marcus," she pleaded. "It's just 2 more weeks. The payment will be there. I just need more time." Marcus's voice, my husband's voice, was not warm or supportive. It was flat, cold, and final. "Time is up, Beatrice. The terms were clear. You defaulted. The property is ours." "Ours or yours," she'd spat. "She'll find out. Alara is smart. She will find out what you are." "Goodbye, Beatrice," he'd said, and the line clicked. I was still listening to the static of the dead line, my vision blurring, when Marcus spoke again in my ear, live, in real time. "So," he said, his tone still light, "what's the plan for dinner? Even out there in the woods, you gotta eat, right?" I couldn't speak. I was frozen, trapped between the recording and the reality. And in that silence, as Marcus waited for my answer, I heard something in the background of his call. A woman's voice, soft, low, and unmistakable. "Darling, tell her to hang up. We're going to be late for the flight." I stopped breathing. The blood drained from my face, and the room spun. I knew that voice. I had just approved her bonus last week. It was Chloe, our new, brilliant head of legal. I slammed the phone down, cutting off Marcus's confused, "Ilara." The silence of the lake house rushed back in, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with the truth. I don't know how long I stood there, staring out the window at the black, unfeeling water. The phone was on the floor where I'd dropped it. The only sound was the buzzing in my own ears, the sound of my life collapsing. "Chloe, darling, tell her to hang up." It wasn't a mistake. It was a partnership. My mind unspooled, rewinding past the lies, searching for the truth. It landed on a crowded Seattle tech mixer 5 years ago. I was Alara, founder of Auratech Solutions, full of code and ideas but hemorrhaging cash. I was in over my head, drowning in spreadsheets I didn't understand. And then, there was Marcus. He wasn't a tech guy. He was a strategic consultant, a man who radiated a calm, effortless charisma. He listened to my pitch, smiled, and in 30 minutes, sketched out a financial roadmap on a cocktail napkin that not only saved my company, but secured our first round of funding. He was magic. He joined as a consultant, then, at his gentle suggestion, became my CFO. "You're the visionary, Ilara," he'd said, his hand covering mine over a late-night dinner. "You shouldn't be bogged down by burn rates and projections. Let me handle the mechanics. You just build." It was the most seductive thing anyone had ever said to me. I let him. I let him handle the mechanics of Auratech, and then, the mechanics of my life. He proposed a year later, on the day we went public. My rock, my partner, a sharp, painful memory cut through. Christmas, just last year. We'd visited Beatrice for a rare, obligatory dinner. As we were leaving, she'd gripped my arm, her fingers surprisingly strong. "He's too perfect, Alara," she'd whispered, her eyes fixed on Marcus as he charmed a neighbor by the doorway. "Nobody is that perfect. The perfect ones are just the best liars." I had laughed it off, patting her hand. "Just because you never married, Auntie, doesn't mean you have to be cynical." I had dismissed it as the bitterness of a lonely old woman. Now, the words echoed in the dusty room, a prophecy I had been too arrogant to hear. And Chloe. The pieces clicked into place with sickening speed. 6 months ago, we needed a new head of legal. I had 2 candidates I liked, both experienced, both vetted, but Marcus had pushed for Chloe. "She's a bulldog, Ilara," he'd insisted. "Aggressive, smart. She's the legal talent we need to play in the big leagues." He'd praised her so lavishly. I'd thought he was just impressed. I see now. He was just installing his accomplice. All those solo trips to Singapore, To Zurich. Just me, Lara, board meetings. It'll be a bore. All those late nights at the office for the last 2 quarters. Just me and the legal team. He'd text. Working through the new compliance regs. Don't wait up. It wasn't the legal team. It was Chloe. It was all a lie. A meticulously constructed alibi for an affair I had been too busy and too trusting to see. He had walled me off. Our finances were a black box. Just let me handle it. Love. He'd say when I asked about our personal investments. Your signature just goes here. You've got that big software launch. You focus on the vision. I turned back to the laptop, my fingers moving numbly on the trackpad. I wasn't just his wife. I was his mark. I found one more document, tucked in a folder labeled Correspondence. It wasn't a loan agreement. It was an email. The first email. It was from Beatrice, sent directly to Marcus's personal account 7 months ago. She was in trouble. Her pension had been cut. She had medical bills. She was short on her mortgage. She was writing to him, as her niece's husband, asking for a personal loan. I know you're good with money. Marcus, she'd written, I'm so proud of what you and Alara have built. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't an emergency. I can put the house up as collateral, just until I can get my affairs in order. I scrolled down. His reply, sent 2 days later, was kind, concerned, even. He said he was so sorry to hear of her troubles, but that it was improper for him to lend to her personally. It could create a family conflict. But, he said, he knew of a private venture capital firm that specialized in bridge loans. They were discreet, fast, and he could put in a good word. The firm was called Elysian Ventures. My vision went white at the edges. He didn't just find her in distress. He didn't just take advantage of her. He took her desperate, trusting plea for help and used it to set a bear trap. He funneled her into his own predatory shell company, loaded her with an impossible interest rate, and waited. He had systematically, coldly, and with the full force of the law, stripped my last living relative of her home, her security, and her life. This wasn't just foreclosure. He hadn't just let her die. He had, in every way that mattered, legally killed her. The shock didn't last. It receded like the tide, leaving behind something cold and hard and sharp. I sat at the desk, the room dark save for the glow of my laptop, and the pain congealed into a single, clarifying thought. Why the house, if this was just about money? He didn't need me here. He had already foreclosed. The asset was his. But the inheritance, the calls, the insistence I come alone that was theater. This wasn't just a grab. It was a performance. And this house was the stage. He needed me here for a reason. He needed me isolated, or he needed me to find what Beatrice had hidden. He wasn't just checking on me. He was checking on the progress of his own plan. I turned back to the USB drive, but I wasn't a wife anymore. I was a CEO, and I was analyzing a competitor. I opened the root folder and began to work, not with my heart, but with my brain. This was no side project. Elysian Ventures was a parasite, and Auratech was the host. I cross-referenced the Elysian bank records with my own company's internal accounting. The blood drain was obvious. Once I knew where to look, hundreds of thousands of dollars paid out over 6 months in consulting fees to Elysian Ventures, another set of massive invoices for legal strategic analysis. Each one was approved with 2 signatures: Marcus, as CFO, authorizing the payment, and Chloe, as head of legal, validating the contract. It was a perfect, self-sustaining loop of theft, but the money was the least of it. The cash was just the grease for the real machine. I found another folder, this one labeled Project Atlas. It was the code name for our new proprietary AI, my life's work. The core intellectual property of Auratech, and inside were file transfer logs, data mirrors, sections of our source code, systematically copied and transferred to a secure server, a server registered to Elysian Ventures. They weren't just robbing the bank. They were stealing the blueprints for the vault. They were taking my company's future, my vision, and moving it into a shell they controlled completely. The terrible, suffocating truth landed on me all at once. Marcus hadn't just let me inherit this house. He had orchestrated it. He knew Beatrice was hiding evidence. He knew because he had been here. He'd been here, and he had been careless or arrogant, and she had caught him, and she had built this digital fortress. Marcus needed me to come here. He needed me to either find this and be discredited as a hysterical, grieving wife, or, more likely, he just needed me gone. He needed me off the board, out of the office, somewhere remote and cut off from my team. The plan was brilliant. It was hideous. He and Chloe would trigger a massive financial scandal at Oratech, right after I was safely tucked away. They would discover the embezzlement, the siphoned funds, but they wouldn't trace it to Elysian. They would trace it to me. They had the fake documents, the wire transfers. Marcus, as CFO, would present his findings to the board, painting a picture of a CEO who was unstable, managing poorly, and stealing from her own company. And where would that CEO be isolated, incommunicado, trapped in a remote lake house, grieving and clearly unhinged? They would have me arrested here, far from my lawyers, far from my allies, while they put their feet up on the desks I had paid for. It was a corporate coup, disguised as a personal tragedy. But how could they sever me so quickly? I was the founder. The board was loyal. I scanned the last few files on the drive, my eyes burning, and then I found it. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a legal memo, drafted by Chloe. Subject CEO Contract Clause 11B, Morality and Fiduciary Duty. I read as the legal jargon laid out the entire plan. It detailed the exact process for invoking the morality clause in my own CEO contract. It specified that any credible allegation of gross financial mismanagement or embezzlement, pending a full investigation, would be grounds for an immediate, no-recourse suspension of the CEO. The final paragraph was the kill shot. It recommended that in such an event, to ensure stability, the board should immediately vote to appoint the CFO, Marcus, as interim CEO. Everything was planned, all of it. I opened my laptop's calendar, and there it was, an emergency board meeting, scheduled by Marcus for next Monday. The trap wasn't just set. The jaws were already closing. The first thing I did was stop moving, stop breathing, stop panicking. I thought about Marcus, not the man I loved, but the man who had just recorded his dying aunt. He was meticulous, he was arrogant, but he was not sloppy. If this house was a trap, he would be watching it. I stood in the center of the musty living room, my skin crawling. Where would I put a camera? I scanned the room, not as its inheritor, but as a security expert. Not the fireplace, too obvious. Not the lamp, too cliché. My eyes landed on the bookshelf, on a new, black plastic smoke detector, still shiny, installed next to the faded, yellowed ivory original one. A redundant system. I walked over, pulled the chair from the desk, and stood on it. A tiny pinprick lens was aimed directly at the desk in the study, visible through the doorway. It was aimed right at the safe. He wasn't just watching me. He was waiting for me to find it. My rage was so cold it almost choked me. He had been watching me, waiting for the moment I opened that safe. And I had done it. He probably thought I was sitting here, a confused, grieving widow, ripe for the plucking. I didn't smash it. I went to the ancient fuse box in the kit read, a spider web of old wires. I found the circuit labeled Living Room Study. I took a screwdriver from a kit read drawer and, with a precision I didn't know I possessed, created a short, a pop, a flash of blue spark, and the power to the room died. I went back to the outlet nearest the camera, pulled the faceplate off, and charred the wiring inside just enough. It would look like what it was, a faulty, ancient wire finally giving up the ghost. A local outage. The camera was dead. I couldn't use my phone. It was compromised. My laptop was compromised. I took the USB drive and put it in my pocket, next to Beatrice's key. I grabbed my car keys, my wallet, and walked out. I didn't look back. I drove for 30 minutes, not to the nearest town, but to the one after that, a small fishing village with a single gas station. I used the ATM, pulling out $300. I left my real phone in the car. I walked to a small market and bought a prepaid burner phone. Then I went to the electronics store next door and bought the cheapest, cleanest laptop they had. I paid for both in cash. I sat in my car, activated the phone, and made my first call. Not to the police, not to a lawyer, to Ben. Ben is my executive assistant, but that's just a title. He's a former Army tech ops guy who came to Auratech because he was bored with cybersecurity. He's the only person I trust more than my own code. I used the app we used for truly sensitive IP, the one that lives outside our official servers. He answered in one ring. Boss. Ben, code red, full firewall, I'm going dark. How dark? Black hole dark. I need you to build me a ghost. I'm on a solo hiking trip. Olympic National Park. No signal. I'm distraught. Grieving. You understand? There was no hesitation. Understood. You're off-grid. When was your last contact? Right now. You won't be able to reach me. You'll tell everyone, especially Marcus, that I called and said I was turning my phone off to be with nature. You'll handle any inquiries. You are my only wall. Building the wall now, he said. Your GPS will ping from the Mount TJ trail in 5, then it goes dead. Be safe. Alara. The call ended. I knew that. In the real world, my digital self was now halfway up a mountain. My second call was to Zoe, my best friend from college. She'd been a math geek then. Now she was one of the top forensic accountants in Denver. Zoe, I said, my voice finally cracking. I have a job. It's off the books, and it's an emergency. Ilara, what's wrong? You sound... I need you to dig. I'm sending you a name. Elysian Ventures. I need to know everything it's connected to, and I need you to trace it back to my company, Auratech Solutions, and to Marcus. There was a heavy silence. To your... Marcus. To Marcus, I said, the word tasting like ash. Do it fast. Zoe. As if my life depends on it. I'll start now, she said. I drove back to the lake house, the clean laptop and the burner phone hidden under the seat. I entered the dark, powerless room, and for the first time, I felt safe. I tethered the new laptop to the burner's hotspot. Then I used my real phone, the compromised one, to send one last scheduled message. I timed it through Ben's server, so it would arrive in an hour. It was bright, cheerful, and full of exclamation points. Hey, you were right. This place is amazing. So peaceful. I think I'm going to stay a few more days. Really disconnect. I'm turning my phone off. Don't worry, love you. The burner phone vibrated just as I hit send. It was Zoe. That was too fast. Ilara, she said, and her voice was gone. All the joking warmth was gone. What? It's worse. It's so much worse than you think. Elysian Ventures. It's not a company. It's a template. It's connected to a dozen other LLCs, all in Delaware, all shells. He's done this before. What do you mean? I cross-referenced the registration data with Chloe's employment history. The last firm she worked at a small biotech startup in Austin. 6 months after she and a financial consultant joined, the company went under. Massive financial scandal. I held the phone tighter. And the founder, he shot himself. Ilara, Zoe said, her voice a whisper. He killed himself 2 days after a scandal broke, blaming him for embezzlement. Ilara, this isn't the first time they've done this. Dig, I said into the burner phone, my voice flat. Dig until you hit bedrock. I want to know the name of the man in Austin. I want to know what he ate for breakfast. I want to know how they did it. I'm on it, Zoe said, her voice grim. Stay safe, Ilara, and stay dark. For the next 8 hours, I sat in the cold, silent house, the clean laptop my only light. The burner phone would buzz, and Zoe would feed me another piece of my husband's real life. It was like watching a documentary of a monster, only to realize it was wearing the face of the man I slept next to. The story of the Austin inventor was not just a repeat, it was a blueprint. His name was Daniel Reed, a brilliant engineer who had developed a new battery technology. He was, like me, a visionary, not a businessman. He had been looking for a CFO. Zoe's voice was tight with fury as she relayed the details. Marcus didn't exist in Austin. Alara, a Michael Vance did. That's the name he used. He joined as a strategic consultant. 2 months later, Chloe was hired as in-house counsel. They were a team. They restructured his financing, streamlined his IP holdings. They stole it, I whispered. They did more than that. They buried him in debt, all to shell companies they controlled. Then they discovered he'd been using company funds to pay his personal debts they themselves had manufactured. He was ruined, wiped out in less than 1 year. The company, and all his tech, was bought out of bankruptcy for pennies on the dollar by a competitor. Elysian Ventures, registered 3 weeks later, got the first big contract from the new owners. My head was spinning. So, Michael Vance, that's who he is. Hold on, Zoe said. I'm running a deep background on Vance. The line was quiet for 10 minutes. I just stared at the wall, at the peeling paint, trying to match the man who cried at our wedding with a man who could drive another human being to suicide. Oh my God, Zoe breathed. Okay, Marcus. Is Michael Vance. Or, more accurately, Michael Vance is Marcus, his legal name. He has a sealed juvenile record for financial fraud on the East Coast. He legally changed his name to Marcus Thorne 10 years ago, right after the record was sealed. He wiped his own slate clean. They were predators, serial predators. This was what they did. They found companies, specifically companies like mine, like Daniel's, startups founded by people they could charm, people they could marry. They targeted women. They targeted innovators. They found people who led with their hearts and their vision, and they exploited that trust as a business strategy. My entire life, my entire 5-year relationship was a long con. The whirlwind romance, the support, the belief in my vision, it was a business tool, a long-term infiltration. I wasn't his wife. I was his primary target. I wasn't his partner. I was the mark. There's more, Zoe said, her voice dropping. I've been tracing the money from Auratech, the money from Daniel's company. It doesn't just sit in the Elysian account. It's moving. Where? I asked. It's being washed through 3 different shells. Then it's all landing in one place. An offshore trust, Grand Cayman. The sums are staggering. Alara, we're talking millions. Enough to disappear and live in luxury forever. I felt a strange, bitter taste in my mouth. So that was the end game. Burn Auratech to the ground, steal the IP, cash out, and disappear to a beach with Chloe, living off the smoking ruins of my life. There's one more thing, Zoe said, and her voice was so small, so terrified, that it was the first thing that truly broke through my cold, analytical rage. When I was looking into their personal finances, I looked for insurance policies, standard procedure, and Marcus took out a new life insurance policy on you, Alara, 2 months ago, right after Chloe's hire was finalized. That's standard, Zoe. We're partners. We have policies on each other for the company. Not like this, she said, and I could hear her starting to cry. This isn't for the company. This is a personal policy. The payout is $5 million, and the sole beneficiary is him. Just him. The pieces slammed together so hard it knocked the air from my lungs. The lake house, the isolation, the faulty wiring, the board meeting next Monday that was just Plan A. The morality clause was the clean way to get rid of me. But Marcus wasn't a man who relied on one plan. He was a man who brought a backup. I was the backup. If I, the unstable, grieving, thieving CEO, didn't go quietly, if I fought back, if I somehow proved my innocence, there was always Plan B. A tragic, fatal accident, alone at a remote lake house, right before my crimes were due to be exposed. A grieving husband, left to pick up the pieces of the company and a $5 million payout. He wasn't just trying to frame me, he was perfectly willing to kill me. The fear was gone. It had been burned away, leaving nothing but a cold, clean fury. He wasn't just a con man. He wasn't just an adulterer. He was a predator, and he was trying to kill me. Plan A. Plan B, it didn't matter. He had miscalculated. He thought I was a visionary. He thought I was soft, all heart, someone who needed him to handle the mechanics. He forgot that the visionary is the one who sees the whole board. I picked up the burner phone. I didn't need Zoe's help for this. I needed a shark. I needed David. David has been Oratech's corporate counsel since the beginning. He's a brilliant, no-nonsense lawyer who I've trusted with my company for a decade. He was also the one person Marcus had been trying to get me to fire for the last year. He's not a team player. Lara, Marcus would say. He's too old school, too cautious. He's holding us back. Now I knew why. David was the one man Marcus couldn't charm, couldn't bully, and couldn't fool. He was the one man who looked at Marcus and saw, as he'd once told me, a very good suit with nothing inside. I sent David a text from the burner code 9. My personal line is dead. Need meet. 45 minutes. The Comet. The Comet was a 24-hour diner in the suburbs, a place we'd gone a few times in the early days to sign papers over bad coffee. Code 9 was our old emergency signal for a data breach. He'd be there. I scrubbed the laptop, took the burner, and left the house, merging onto the highway. I was a ghost, driving my own car, but my digital self was still on a mountain. David was already in a back booth, a full cup of coffee in front of him, untouched. He looked worried. When he saw me, he didn't relax. He looked more worried. Alara, what in God's name is going on? Ben said you were hiking. I didn't sit. I need you to look at this, David, as my lawyer, and as the company's lawyer, not as my friend. I slid the clean laptop across the table, opened to the root folder of Beatrice's USB drive. I put the drive itself on the table. This is everything my Aunt Beatrice saved before she died, I said. Then I placed my burner phone next to it. This is a report from Zoe, the forensic accountant, and this... I slid a single printed page from my pocket, the one Zoe had emailed me, is a $5 million life insurance policy Marcus took out on me 2 months ago. For 20 minutes, David didn't speak. He just read. He scrolled through the Elysian contracts. He read Zoe's trace on the Cayman accounts. He saw the Austin Daniel Reed file. He saw the insurance policy. I watched his face go from pale to ashen to a tight, furious mask. He finally looked up. The emergency board meeting, he said. It wasn't a question. Next Monday, I said. He's going to invoke Clause 11B. He'll paint me as an unstable embezzler and have himself voted interim CEO. David's eyes went flat. This was his world. No, he said. He won't. He was no longer pale. He was in attack mode. The board meeting is happening. Marcus and Chloe scheduled it, but they're not going to be running it. We are. What do? We prepare a counter-ambush, David said, his fingers already flying on his own phone. I've got 3 board members I trust with my life. I'm calling a pre-meeting for tomorrow, off-site. You and I will present this, all of it. We're not just going to stop him, Ilara. We're going to gut him. He looked at me, his eyes sharp. Go back to the lake house. You're still a grieving niece. You're still off-grid. Ben's alibi is perfect. Do not break cover. I'll handle the board. You get me anything else you can find. Anything. I drove back, the fury now channeled into a single purpose. I was a weapon, and Beatrice had given me the arsenal. When I got back to the dark house, I didn't see it as a crypt anymore. I saw it as a fortress, Beatrice's fortress. And I thought, if she put a camera on Marcus's desk, where else had she put them? She was a reclusive, stubborn woman who had just been threatened by a con man. She wouldn't have just hidden files. I started searching, not for money, but for wires. It took me 2 hours. They were everywhere. Tiny, pinhole microphones in the kit read, another in the study, a small, hard-wired camera in the hallway, disguised as a motion sensor. This woman had been terrified. She had been under siege, and she had recorded everything. The system was old, wired to a digital recorder hidden in the pantry, powered by the same circuit I had not fried. I rewound the footage, looking for anything, and then I saw a date stamp. 4 days ago, after Beatrice died, but before I arrived. The timestamp read 2:00 p.m. The hallway camera flickered to life. The front door opened. It was Marcus and Chloe. They weren't sad. They were celebratory. They walked in, Chloe's arms around his neck, and they kissed. "It's done," Marcus said, his voice echoing in the empty house. The lawyer called. "The inheritance is processed. She'll get the call tomorrow." "And she'll come?" Chloe asked, running her hand along the wall. "Of course she'll come," he sneered. "She'll come to grieve and connect with her roots. She's so predictable." Chloe laughed. "It's a shame about the old woman, though. She was a fighter." I froze. My hand clutched the edge of the counter. Marcus walked toward the study, his voice low and cold. "She was a loose end. We did her a favor. A few missed medication deliveries in this weather. A woman her age. The heart just gives out. So tragic. And so clean." He turned and looked almost directly at the camera I was now watching. "Now, let's make sure the little camera is set for our grieving widow. I want to see her face when she finds that safe." I held the small, cold recorder in my hand. A few missed medication deliveries. The heart just gives out. This was not a recording of a crime. It was the crime itself. The rage was so pure it was almost silent. This wasn't just fraud. This was, at minimum, manslaughter, maybe murder. He had actively, knowingly, and with celebration, killed my aunt. I didn't call David. I drove. I met him back at the diner at 6 in the morning, my face a mask. I didn't say hello. I just put the recorder on the table between us and pressed play. David listened, his face turning from grim to granite. When Marcus's voice laughed about the clean death, David closed his eyes. He didn't say a word. He just took the recorder, put it in a certified evidence bag from his briefcase, and made a call. "I have it," he said to the person on the other end. "I'm bringing it in now. It's everything we thought, and it's worse." He looked at me. "That was my contact at the district attorney's office. This is now an active homicide investigation. The board meeting is secondary." "No," I said, my voice sharp. "It's not. The homicide case. That's for Beatrice. The board meeting. That's for me. He doesn't just go to jail. He has to be undone. Publicly, I want him to walk into that room as a king and be carried out as a criminal." David nodded, a new, cold respect in his eyes. "Then we work. But not here." For the next 2 days, we lived in a secure conference room at David's downtown firm. We were a ghost team. David, handling the legal strategy and coordinating with the DA, who agreed to hold off on any arrest until Monday. Zoe, patched in on a 24-hour encrypted video feed from Denver, her face pale, surrounded by spreadsheets, and me. We worked around the clock, fueled by black coffee and a righteous nuclear fury. Zoe's job was to build the map, and it was a masterpiece of financial destruction. She created a visual presentation, a single devastating flowchart. It showed the Oratech logo, with a thick red line bleeding from it into the black box of Elysian Ventures. From there, the money scattered, spiderwebbing into 3 other shells before finally funneling into one single, offshore account in the Cayman Islands. An account she had, by some dark magic, managed to get the statements for. "He's not just stealing," she said, her voice tinny. "He's liquidating. He's been accelerating the transfers all week." Meanwhile, I maintained my cover. My digital ghost, Ben, was my masterpiece. I was the grieving widow, lost in the wilderness. I forwarded Marcus the photos Ben had expertly photoshopped me, smiling wanly by a waterfall, me looking contemplative on a fake mountain peak. "Hey," I texted from my compromised phone, letting Ben time the delivery. "It's so quiet here, really clearing my head. See you in a few days. Love you." The response came back, forwarded by Ben. "Take all the time you need. Lara, just know I'm thinking of you. I'm so proud of you. Can't wait to have you home." "He's getting cocky," Zoe muttered, watching the account flows. "His confidence, it's making him sloppy. He just moved another 2 million. He's emptying the coffers before his big takeover. He thinks you're a non-issue." "Good," I said. "Let him think I'm a non-issue." David was finalizing the last piece of the trap. "The DA's office is coordinating with the Treasury Department, the Cayman accounts. We have an order. It's set to execute on my command." He tapped his phone. "The second Marcus tables his motion to suspend you, the very second it's on the record, I hit this button. They'll be locked out of every penny, mid-sentence." We had it. The presentation was loaded onto a clean drive. The money was tracked. The police were waiting. The alibi was set. We had planned for everything. Everything except the paranoia of the co-conspirator. Chloe was a lawyer, a very good, very criminal one. And as head of legal, she was meticulous. The idea of a CEO going completely dark, even a grieving one, for this long, right before their big move, it didn't sit right. It was too clean, too easy. She had to be worried about the one person she was supposed to be monitoring for Marcus. So she drove. She left Seattle, telling Marcus she was checking on a remote site property, and drove her white sedan all the way out to the Olympic Peninsula. She was probably just going to check the house, see if my car was there, see if the lights were on. But she never made it to the house. She drove right past the Comet Diner, and her dash cam, always on, always recording, caught it. 2 figures, in the pre-dawn light, in the corner of the parking lot. Me, alive and furious, not grieving and lost. And David, my corporate lawyer, the one man they both knew was my most loyal bulldog. Chloe pulled over a mile down the road. She rewound the footage. She watched me hand David a laptop. She watched us talking, not with comfort, but with strategy. She knew. She knew the hiking trip was a lie. She knew the grieving widow was an act. She knew, in that gut-freezing moment, that the trap was not for me. It was for them. Chloe didn't call me. She was too smart for that. She called David. We were back in the law firm's war room, deep into Sunday night, a single day before the board meeting, when David's personal phone, not his work phone, but his personal one, lit up. The number was blocked. He looked at it, then at me. He let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through from the same blocked number. "I know what you're doing. I saw you. I can help. I need immunity. Meet me now or I talk to Marcus." David held the phone out. "The rat is jumping the ship," he said, his voice void of emotion. "She saw us," I said. "At the diner. She knows. She's terrified." "She's not terrified," David corrected. "She's trading up. This isn't a plea for help." "It's a negotiation," he texted back. "Where?" The reply was instant. "East Garage, Public Library, top level, come alone. David, just you." David looked at me. "She's trying to separate us. She thinks I'm just the lawyer. She thinks I'm the one she can make a deal with." "I'm coming," I said. "No. She's spooked. If she sees you, she might run. Let me go. Let me be the reasonable lawyer. You stay here. Lock this door. I'll record everything. He was right. I was too hot. I was the wife, the victim. She wouldn't talk to me. She'd only talk to the man she thought she could use. I waited. For 2 hours. I sat in that sterile, fluorescent-lit room, alone with Zoe's spreadsheet of my husband's theft. It was the longest 2 hours of my life. Finally, the door opened. David walked in. He didn't look relieved. He looked sick. He put a small digital recorder on the table. She was there. She was rattled. What did she say? She told me Marcus lied to her. He'd sworn I was in his pocket and that you were a depressed, checked-out wife, completely unaware. When she saw us at the diner, she knew she was the designated scapegoat. So she's going to flip. She already did. David hit play. Chloe's voice filled the room, but it wasn't the sharp, confident legal voice I knew. It was shaky, fast, and dripping with a desperate, self-serving fear. You have to understand. David, he forced my hand from the beginning. He's not who you think he is. He's a monster. He told me it was just a business move, a simple buyout. I didn't know about Beatrice, I swear. I didn't know about any of the Austin, the Daniel Reed stuff until I was already in too deep. David's voice was audible, cold as ice. What did you bring me? Chloe. Everything, she whispered. He's got the IP, the real IP, the Atlas code. It's not on the Elysian server. That's just a decoy. It's on a private, air-gapped server in a data haven. And I have the passwords. I have the access keys, the real ones. I'll give you everything. I need a deal. I'll testify. I'll give you Marcus. Just get me out. I wanted to smash the recorder. She was painting herself as a victim, a woman coerced, just another one of Marcus's marks. She was as much a predator as he was. Did you take it? I asked David, my voice tight. I took the drive with the passwords, he said. And I told her I would speak to the DA about her cooperation. I didn't promise her a thing. He looked at me, and his face was gray. But that's not all. What? I asked her about the insurance policy. I asked her about Plan B. David pressed play again. Plan B. Chloe's recorded voice was hesitant. The $5 million policy. Chloe. The accidental death. What happens if the board doesn't vote his way? There was a long silence on the recording. Then, Chloe's voice came back, and it was different. It was terrified. He told me. He said you'd never believe me. He told me I was paranoid and too emotional. He said it was just a backup. What was the backup? Chloe. David's voice was a low growl. It wasn't supposed to be an accident, she choked out. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. on Monday. But Marcus, he hired someone, a fixer he used in Austin. That man is scheduled to be at the lake house at 10 a.m. on Monday. Marcus's plan was to call Alara right after the vote, to break the bad news about her suspension, to make her distraught. I gripped the edge of the table. The fixer. Chloe was openly weeping now. He was supposed to find her like that. After the scandal broke, he was going to stage it, make it look like a suicide. He was going to handle her, and Marcus was going to text me, after, to come and help him clean up. He was going to plant my DNA at the scene. He wasn't just getting rid of Alara. He was going to frame me for it. He was going to get rid of us both. Monday, 9 a.m., the main boardroom at Auratech. The long, polished mahogany table reflected the nervous faces of our board members. At the head of the table, in my chair, sat Marcus. He looked every inch the CEO confident, controlled, a mask of grave concern on his handsome face. Chloe sat to his right, her laptop open, her expression one of legal solemnity. I know this is unprecedented, Marcus began, his voice rich with fake regret. I called this emergency meeting because I discovered something I cannot, in good conscience, ignore. He began his presentation. my fake documents, my forged signatures expertly crafted. He presented charts showing financial irregularities, funds being moved to an unknown account. He painted a picture of a brilliant but troubled founder crumbling under pressure. "It is with the heaviest heart," he said, "that I must share my concerns about Alara's unstable mental health. Her grief has, well, it's clear she's not thinking rationally." He gestured to the screen. "This points to embezzlement." He let the word hang in the air. The board was in an uproar. "Therefore," Marcus continued, his voice cutting through the noise, "I must move to invoke Clause 11B. For the protection of this company, we must vote to suspend Alara as CEO in absentia and appoint an interim leader until a full audit can be completed." "I second that motion," Chloe said, her voice sharp. As the board members began to speak over one another, as the chaos he had engineered began to peak, the main boardroom doors swung open. Every head turned. I walked in. I had taken the red eye back with David, slept for 0 hours, and had never felt more alive. I was wearing a sharp black suit, and I had left Beatrice's key on a chain around my neck. Marcus froze. His face, just a moment ago so full of command, collapsed. The color drained. His mouth fell open. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. I walked to the head of the table, stood directly next to him, and placed my hand on the back of my chair. "Thank you for keeping my seat warm." "Marcus," I said, my voice echoing in the sudden, dead silence. "Alara, you're supposed to be," he stammered, "hiking." I asked. "Yes, I was, but I came back for this." I looked at the board. "Ladies, gentlemen, please retake your seats. The presentation you've just seen is a complete fabrication. My husband, however, is not—" David moved to the front, with Zoe patched in on the main screen from Denver. "What you are about to see," I said, "is the real audit." For the next 20 minutes, we tore him to shreds. We didn't just present evidence. We executed him. Zoe's financial map hit the screen first. "This," I said, "is Elysian Ventures, a shell company created by Marcus Thorne, or, as he was known in Austin, Michael Vance." We showed them the Austin files, the suicide of Daniel Reed, the identical pattern. We showed them the Cayman accounts, and as I spoke, David hit the button on his phone. "And as of right now," I said, "those accounts, holding over $12 million of Oratech's stolen funds, have been seized by the U.S. Treasury." We showed them the stolen IP, and I put Chloe's drive on the table. "We have the access keys. We have our code back." Marcus was gray. He was sweating, looking from me to the door, to Chloe, who was staring at her laptop, refusing to look at anyone. "But this was never just about money," I said. My voice dropped, and the room went cold. "This was about this house." I played the audio, Beatrice's voice, small and frail, pleading for time, and Marcus, cold and final, foreclosing on my aunt. "And finally," I said, "I'd like you all to hear what a celebration of a job well done sounds like." I played the last recording. The boardroom, full of executives, was forced to listen to the sound of my husband and his lover, in my aunt's house, celebrating her death. A few missed medication deliveries. The heart just gives out. So tragic, and so clean. A woman on the board gasped and put her hand over her mouth. Marcus stood up so fast his chair screeched and fell over. He made a bolt for the door. He didn't make it. The doors opened, but it wasn't an exit. It was the 2 detectives David had arranged, waiting in the hallway. They stepped in, flanking him. "Marcus Thorne, you're under arrest for suspicion of manslaughter, wire fraud, and conspiracy." As they put his hands behind his back, as the steel handcuffs snapped shut, his head whipped around. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Chloe, who was still sitting in the corner, her face a pale, tear-streaked mask, waiting to give her statement. "You," he screamed, his voice a feral shriek. "You bitch, we had a deal." Chloe looked up, her eyes no longer loving, no longer terrified. They were just empty. "No, Marcus," she said, her voice flat. "You had a plan. I had an escape route." They dragged him out, still screaming. I stood there, in the silence of my boardroom, and for the first time in 6 months, I took a full, deep breath. I looked at my board. "Now, if there is no further old business, let's talk about the future of Oratech." I stood there, watching my company get saved, my hand clutching the small, cold brass key around my neck. The lake house was safe, my company was safe, and I, finally, was free. Thank you for listening to this story. Please comment below and let us know where you're listening from so we can connect and share our thoughts. We invite you to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and support us further by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.